Hello, everybody. This is Joey Tedesco from the Cartoon-Palooza, and I went to go treat myself to seeing Norm of the North. Norm of the North is a representation of why people don't see movies in January. Summer's over, all the blockbusters have come out. December is done, the fall season's done, so all the movies that the studios want to put out for the Academy for nominations or the BAFTA or the Globe Awards, those have been released already, so at this point you get the films where studios are like, well, we need to make back our money, so whatever we have left, we're just going to put on the screen. And that's where we get January. We get movies that literally don't try. And as far as animation goes, a lot of them just don't care. This is where you get your nut jobs. This is where you get Strange Magic. This is where you get movies like the things that the Weinsteins just put out because, hey, we put out all of our award-nominated crap out. Let's just put out stuff to make money. Yeah, and you get Norm of the North. The latest example from Lionsgate. Because when you think of great animation, the studio that comes to mind is Lionsgate. I mean, what great contribution has they produced? Nothing. Nothing at all. And you look back at this year and you ask yourself, well, we had animated movies that question morality and the thought process of how we think about the world, how we process memories in a fun way for adults and children. We have a movie about a twerking bear. And that story itself makes no sense. And the bear itself is voiced by Rob Schneider, whose only great cinematic contribution was saying "you can do it" in The Waterboy multiple times. And you get, for a couple of scenes, Bill Nighy. Yeah, Bill Nighy's in the movie. I'm guessing he was only in for a few scenes. I think his character was supposed to be there more, but even Bill Nighy knew this wasn't worth doing for more than 3 scenes. This is Norm of the North, people. Yeah. In case you didn't know, I went to go see this movie, and this isn't supposed to be taken as offense to anybody, but I didn't really comment much about seeing this movie. I just kind of went out of work to go see, just quickly get this out of the way because I knew I had to make a video about this because that's what I do. I'm the animation guy. I gotta stay up to date with stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's my guilt. So I just got this out of the way. I go to the theater, and there are half the theater, of course, children and parents that really didn't give a crap. I think the kids wanted to go see Star Wars because most of them weren't laughing. You get the uncomfortable chuckles from the adults trying to motivate the kids to laugh. But for the most part, I think all the kids really just wanted to see Star Wars. And the only kids that were talking were the ones that were so bored that they wanted to have conversations about why they're not watching Star Wars. And then you have, and this isn't supposed to be taken as offense to anybody who works in residential care or group homes, with kids who have developmental disabilities. Half the theater was kids who had developmental disabilities and their counselors, aides. And I'm thinking to myself, from my experience having worked as an aide, why would you do that? Why would you bring kids who have developmental disabilities, they stem, they make noises, they treat them like adults because showing them the first animated movie for the sake of, well, that's for them, that's what they, of course, that's the assumption that they'll like that because it's bright and colorful, and I don't want to stay with them in the group home for like a couple hours, just put them there. You could have just shown them Star Wars or got them engaged. You had to take them to Norm of the North because while I was in that theater, you had kids that were uncontrollably stemming, and I could relate because if I had to be stuck watching this movie, I would start stemming, and I don't have any developmental disabilities. I'm just saying I actually felt myself trying to stimulate myself while watching this before I was falling asleep. Because at one point in this movie, I was sleeping. I mean, yeah, I had an exhausting day at work, and I was actually fighting myself to stay awake while watching Norm of the North. And this part I was falling asleep, I knew I could, because this was the montage where he was dancing. Because the bear talks, and he wants to save his home in the Arctic from the villain who wants to build houses in the Arctic. The villain wants to make houses in the Arctic, the most barren wasteland possible. And a couple of times in the movie, they point out how stupid this is, and they try to constantly justify it by saying approval ratings this, approval ratings that, without any idea of what they're doing. And you get the basic conflict, which to me really isn't a strong conflict. And some movies are built upon a great conflict. That's good storytelling. Obviously, this is just every stereotype in every animated movie out there to a point where it became the most cliched and contrived that, you know what, I said, screw it. I got the lounge chair. I'm going to rest my eyes for a little bit. And when I woke up, I was back to the same crap. And I was thinking to myself, you know what, if I did fall asleep through this movie, at least I would have a comfortable chair to sit in to fall asleep in. One thing that came to my mind when watching this movie was the villain being voiced by Benson. I actually don't even know if it's voiced by Benson from the regular show. And here I'm thinking to myself, if this is Benson from the regular show, and you want to break into feature-length movies, I know you can do better than this, or at least stick to Cartoon Network. I know you can do better than this. You can do better than Norm of the North. You're fired, in the words of Benson. Benson, you're fired. And two other things came to my mind when watching this movie. So you have two lines that stuck out. They're not even good lines, they're just interesting lines. The first line to the movie that I'm thinking about is when the character Norm says, "So, where would the one-note villain keep his secret lair?" And here I'm thinking to myself, your movie's so bad that you have to rely on self-deprecating humor just to point out how bad your movie is. For some people, that you can get great comedy out of that, but at this point, because I'm watching Norm of the North, I'm almost certain he only said that line so that he can acknowledge that we're all having a crappy time watching this movie. Let me just say it so that I can share your pain. This was Norm looking at the audience saying, okay, folks, I know you're watching a crappy movie. Let me point it out to you. This is a crappy movie. Sometimes it works. Here it didn't. And the second line that came to my mind, because Rob Schneider has played a plethora of offensive stereotypes in his career, he has to say the line in the movie, "Oh yeah, because you want to be one of those guys that says all animals look the same." First of all, if you want to play the race card in an animated movie, what does that even mean? You have to make sense. Animals are different species. Species, not races. And even when Rob Schneider, the bear, said that in the movie, the animal looked up at him and was like, "You just said that, didn't you?" I'm almost certain Rob Schneider probably improvised that line, and the animators probably in post were like, we gotta address this, cause this line is stupid, and rather than cut it out because we really don't care, let's just put in a reaction shot of one of the animals going, "Duh?" To go through the cliches in this movie is a chore. Like, you have short little rat creatures that are supposed to be like the Minions, because they don't talk, they speak gibberish, they're working with the hero. They also got to be like the penguins from Madagascar, because they're doing all these flips and turns and hoo-hoo-ha, yeah, hoo-hee-hoo-ha. Who cares? And I guess they wanted to rip off The Lion King, because if you want to rip off a great movie, let's go 20 years in the past to The Lion King, because that's still relevant, I guess. Because the bear wants to be king, but he has to live up to a standard. And something about the king having to be a hunter and wanting to hunt. If you haven't noticed by now, the plot to the movie really doesn't make sense, because all it is just cliches from other movies thrown in to fool people thinking that this is an actual plot with a story where characters are invested, when really it isn't. It's just a string of conveniences. If you really want to get down to a conflict in the movie, I mentioned the housing thing. Really think about it this way. Norm, the bear, has noisy neighbors, so he wants to make a noise complaint and tell his neighbors to leave. That is your conflict in the movie. It is a dumb conflict. That's your plot. And somewhere in between, you have some humans to relate to or try to relate to, and you just can't because, like me, you're either falling asleep or you're uncontrollably stemming, which is, just flapping your arms, trying to be like, get me out of here. I got nothing. I most likely am going to put this on my worst of list. I go in with low expectations to movies. I was at least expecting something about this movie working. Like, even when I saw The Nut Job, I had to acknowledge that the movie had a nice glow to it, and some of the character designs were okay, but the movie was still crappy. This movie didn't really even try in that aspect. Everything had the unfinished render look. Like, it could have went through another rendering process to at least give it the illusion that it's there and not just something created in a computer. Especially when you have furry characters and when the fur is overlapping each other in an unsystematic way, or waves of water don't look real. You just don't care. Like, this is the prime example of going to the movies in January, is when studios are just like, I don't care. Now, Kung Fu Panda 3 is coming out. I don't know why it's coming out in January. They could have at least waited till February for that. Because at least in February to March, you're going to have the good movies coming out. Some good movies. You'll have Deadpool and BVS coming out. Could have just waited a little there, DreamWorks. But you don't. You got to stick it on the same month as Norm of the North. Which I'm only hoping is that people will get so frustrated out of this movie that they're going to go back to watch Star Wars or Kung Fu Panda 3. Maybe this is what the movie was supposed to be. Just the bad headliner to get people to go, okay, go there. I'm Joey Tedesco. That's my review. I'm out.